Hey y'all, good morning. I'm really grateful to be here with you all. Let's talk about creative transformations. And so many of the songs that we sang this morning speak to that journey of finally finding perhaps that we're not alone in this. So forgive me if I'm a little scattered this morning. I'm a little tired. We did just welcome 2 little people into our home last night, and so we were up until about 2:30, just getting everyone settled and trying to get us all a little bit of sleep. So I'm really grateful to be here. This community feels really welcoming and also like a soft place to land, which is nice. So thank you. Thanks for welcoming me. I really appreciate the invitation. When I was thinking about bringing a message to you all specifically, I wanted to think a little bit about what it means for me and my journey and my becoming. And I think I have something to share along those lines about my own journey, and I'd love to, if anybody feels like sharing about theirs, we can just have a conversation. Does that sound good to y'all? Yeah? Okay. Good. Well, just to start us off, those who know me and who endure church meetings with me, I love to start and end with a poem. So I have one that I'd love to share right now with you all, if that's okay with you. This poem is by Rilke. It has, for me, just been a grounding place. It's entitled, I am, O anxious one. I am, O you anxious one. Don't you sense me, ready to break into being at your touch? My murmurings surround you like shadowy wings. Can't you see me standing before you, cloaked in stillness? Has my longing ripened in you from the beginning, as fruit ripens on a branch? I am the dream you are dreaming. When you want to awaken, I am that wanting. I grow strong in the beauty that you behold, and with the silence of the stars, I unfold your cities made by time. I am, O anxious one. I'm so grateful for your practice of silence, your practice of connecting inwardly. That, for me, has been a tough journey. I can say I'm still definitely in the process of becoming and learning to sit with myself. As a trans non-binary person, I think I often felt like inside was maybe just as not safe as the world that we know. And so over the years and through some education, I've become aware of a model that I really appreciate. It's called community resilience model. And it's a way of using neuroscience, body-based somatic practices to calm my nervous system enough to be able to maybe connect with that oneness, with that big everything that I think exists within us all. And so I started maybe my journey toward where I'm at now as a person who really needed to seek out recovery. I spent a lot of time in my early years running from maybe myself, maybe the pain that I felt or saw in the world. And the first time I got clean, I was actually 20 years old. So I hadn't even had a legal drink, and found myself in a group of young folks that were getting clean. And I journeyed with them for a couple of years. I managed to get a college degree during that time and lived in Europe for 2 years, and really was becoming who I think I am today, and who and who is that person still inside of me now. And I got heavily involved when I came back to the U.S. It was after Katrina had happened, and I moved back to this city, the city where I went to college and where I did some high school. I grew up in Massachusetts, and my family moved down here. And upon moving home, it was during the second war in Iraq, and I just dove into activism. I worked with an organization I know a bunch of you know of, WAND, Women's Action for New Directions, and really dove headfirst into activism. I did work with Working Women 9 to 5 and several different environmental justice organizations, and actually had a pretty meaningful victory in the campaign for tipped workers with 9 to 5. A local restaurant, decided and chose to pay their servers more than what was the $2.13 an hour that we were receiving. And I was overjoyed, and I started drinking again. It started a little slow, but I was also bartending, so then it advanced pretty fast for me. Today I recognize there are so many different ways that we can all heal. My path and my journey came through 12-step programs initially. And when I drank at that point, I just sort of dropped everything. I was living in South Atlanta and very quickly became homeless. Despite having connections to the Hunger Coalition and Project South and all these different organizations, I wasn't able to articulate how I needed help in those moments. And very quickly reached a very significant moment for myself. Thankfully, I did receive the mental health care that I needed at that point, and I was able to get into a transitional program, a shelter for women experiencing homelessness and addiction, and multifaceted layers of recovery in a program in Decatur. So I kind of just disappeared from all of my community that was here in Atlanta, and spent 2 years. I was in the program for 13 months, and then did their transitional housing program, which was on the campus in Decatur. And it was during that time that I really saw and connected with the idea that I needed a faith system in my life, right? I don't love systems, but I felt like I needed something bigger to connect with. And so I began that journey a little. There were many rules and regulations in the program. One of them is that many different folks with different overlapping addictions live there, so we didn't have like processed sugar or caffeine or things like that, but we could have it if we went to a meeting or a church. And so there just happened to be this little Baptist church, not so little actually, in Decatur, that had cinnamon rolls in their early service. And so I went to that service, and fast forward 15 years, and now I'm a Baptist pastor, which is wild to think about as a trans non-binary person in recovery. But yeah, I like to say, that faith group came to me maybe because of cinnamon rolls. And so that sort of began a journey for me toward being a part of and creating healing spaces and spaces for folks like me within a Christian context. I say that, and I believe, and I hold my values in that way. I hold them tightly and also very loosely. I'm an interfaith family, a multi-ethnic family, And the many ways that we become and the many ways that we find meaning are so, so important. And so to hold those closely with me and also loosely in terms of what I believe is a way for anyone. So yeah, coming to the faith community at Park Avenue, that was sort of what was asked of me, is like to talk about the journey of maybe, and shout it out if there's a different direction, but maybe the journey of Park Avenue toward becoming an activist, abolitionist congregation. Maybe it parallels with my own journey of becoming and opening up and coming to know myself and accept myself. So I was called to be one of the pastors after I was the art minister there for about 4 years. I created this position. I was an intern there, and I just never left. I just kept coming to the meetings and kept contributing creative expressions of how to think about connecting with what is divine to us all. I think so often we want maybe linear timelines or beautiful words, even poetry about what the divine means to us. And I think this congregation can definitely appreciate that it shows up sometimes in color forms and in circles and in just ways that aren't or can't be reduced to narrative. And so that's what I did for many years, and I still really value the creativity that can come when we're making meaning. And the creativity in groups can be healing. And so I sort of adapted a narrative model of pastoral care into a visual model. And we would create large-scale paintings where we tell our stories. And we do use words, obviously, to talk about it if we'd like to, but so much of it shows up in image and color and blending or not blending. And for me, that creative opening that can happen when we speak about our inspirations and our becomings is so, so valuable. So after a couple years of doing that, the non-hierarchical circle leadership model was shifting at Park Avenue, and I was called to be one of the pastors there, which to me was a surreal moment to be and inhabit the body that I do, and to also call myself and be a Baptist pastor was a supremely, I think, beautiful time, and also a time where I really felt almost disconnected. I felt like I was really an imposter in the role. I don't hold those pastor-esque beliefs of evangelism or necessarily knowing the answers to give people. And I lead from that. And I think sometimes it can be frustrating. Maybe now some of the folks who've known me a long time know that if they come to me for the answer, I'm going to give them more questions and sit with those questions. And I think that does bring me back to the meditation practice. The meditation practice that I most commonly associate with is centering prayer. It's a model that was developed by Father Thomas Merton. And I think it's not dissimilar from many different models of meditation. For me, I have a guiding image that I try to come back to, and a gentle way of inviting myself back to that center, which is actually a funny story in contemplative Christian circles, they talk about Thomas Merton teaching a class to a bunch of nuns on how to do centering prayer. And they come back after their 15 minutes of meditating, and Thomas Merton reflects and is asking them, how did it go? And one of the little nuns, I imagine her just raising her hand, and she said, Father, I was terrible at the meditation. I could not keep my mind on my centering thought. And, you know, she seemed really, I think, feeling bad about that. And the response was, well, what a beautiful way that each time you maybe need to come back to your centering thought, that the universe, the divine, welcomes you back with open arms. And so for me, that's the image that I have when I'm trying to be gentle to myself in those meditation moments, is just coming back to a loving universe that wants me there, that welcomes me, that invites me to be in its presence. And in fact, maybe I was made for that purpose. And it is from that connectedness that I think all justice work comes from. We see it now so much in the abolition movement here in the city, this positionality of mutual aid, this positionality of caring for each other first and foremost, being present with each other in our needs right then, and from there moving outward for justice. And so a couple of months ago, I've been pastoring, y'all know a world pandemic happened, and still is happening, and that was such a shift for me as a person trying to journey alongside folks. Everything went online. And thankfully we were able to pivot somewhat. But fast forward to February of this year, a dear, dear friend and community member who I've known for many years came to me as a spiritual person and wanted to have an event that could ground the movement to stop Cop City in many different ways of making meaning. And I felt so honored and so trusted with that event. We had what we called the forum in February, and created little rest spaces, and there were healing practitioners, and every event has food, home-cooked food, often vegan and just delicious meals to be had. And we had a Brazilian capoeira demonstration. We had a spiritualist dance. We sang songs, and we came together to talk about who we are as a movement coming together and how we identify ourselves within that movement. So there are those of us who are gatherers. There are those of us who are teachers. There are those of us who want to bring wellness practices and are healers. And that, particularly that event, and being invited into that space and being able to share the space of Park Avenue, really, for me, was a coming home to the movement for justice, a coming home in the fullness of myself, doing activism so many years ago, not feeling grounded and connected, became overwhelming. I loved that song that we sang. I think my heart broke in two, and I couldn't handle it alone. And today, being able to welcome activists, being able to welcome all of us in the movement for justice, as well as those who are in need at that moment, really has been the call, the becoming that made a lot of the different separate parts of my life come together in what is right now. And so thinking about connecting, I'm so grateful again that we had that moment in the service, because it's so easy for me to just go, right? Get up and go. This morning, when a little one woke me up at 7, it was get up and go time. And to not take that time to really center on myself, really invite in the presence of the divine into everything that I do. I guess it's kind of, for me, I don't know. I think it is a place where I judge myself a little bit. Like, how can you forget? It feels like so good to come from this centered place. But as I began to talk about in the beginning, for me, meditation really has been something that I've had to learn and practice and use the tools of community resiliency model to be able to even settle enough to sit with myself. I became a practitioner of community resiliency model, and it's quite simple. There's like 5 guides that you use, and they all center around the practice of tracking. Tracking is simply paying attention to, eventually I pay attention to myself, but usually I start off paying attention to what's around me. So as I was sitting here during our moment of silence, I heard the fan. I heard the floor creaking. I heard some movements around me. And then there is grounding practices. Sitting in a chair, those chairs are really nice. I was able to like push back in my chair to feel that it was supporting me in that moment. There are other ones that are called gestures. I often find myself like just with my hand on my knee, and I'll just be like just touching the fabric on my clothing. It's a self-soothing mechanism that really brings me back to I'm right here in this moment. Anyway, there's so many of these like practices that we can do, and I do see our bodies and our brains as this divine creation that really can call us and teach us how to heal from whatever we're holding on to. And so in the other levels of a community resiliency model, there are practices of identifying within ourselves blockages and inviting them to be recognized. And often in that recognition, we can move through those blockages and those traumas. I follow the work of Resmaa Menakem, who is a somatic abolitionist. If you haven't read My Grandmother's Hands, it's hands down one of the best books that I've seen to take anti-racist principles and put them into practice within ourselves and within our nervous systems. But he talks about metabolizing our traumas, really working through those traumas so that we can be fully present with self. And when we're fully present with self, then our justice work can come from this place of centeredness and wholeness that I really think is the thing that's going to heal the world and heal the systems that are causing this trauma. So learning to teach that. I'll say one last small story. When we were in City Hall on June 5th, they had just voted to continue the project of, to fund the project of the police training facility. The room was filled with rage. The room was filled with folks recognizing that they had not been heard, that their lives and bodies were going to continue to be in danger from this militarized policing that we're already seeing, but that will increase with the police training facility. And I looked around and I saw two other people that I recognized immediately had regulated nervous systems in that moment. And I looked at them and I said, "Will you stay with me?" The police were then guarding the banister part and the council members were leaving. People were yelling. It could have escalated. And in those moments, the regulated nervous systems of some of us in the room, I spoke with one of the police officers and I just said, "Let us de-escalate this." And so by being able to be present and whole in those moments, we could sit with our siblings who rightly were expressing their rage, however that came out, and we could sit with them, and we could also, just by our regulated nervous systems, be able to de-escalate what was happening. And we say this in community resiliency model circles. My gift to the world, our gift to the world can be that we have a presence and a regulated nervous system in those moments that are so hard. So I thank you so much for letting me share a little bit about my story. Does anybody have anything they want to share or ask? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Kaya. I used to come here quite a bit a couple years ago and then kind of fell off. I like what you said about the being involved in activism and then falling flat on your face. I mean, not the falling flat on your face part, but the kind of the process of how it could happen. Mm-hmm. I think that in general, and so I'll tell you my story. So basically, people don't know it already. Some do, some don't. I have bipolar 1 and PTSD. And about the last 13 years, I've been in and out of all kinds of stuff associated with that. I'll leave it there. But what ended up happening was I got kind of gradually sucked into, I guess, what I now consider this sort of extreme leftist politics that started with Occupy, evolved into Standing Rock and other pipeline type resistance projects, and then has sort of evolved into this cop city type stuff. What I find important in my story is the idea of falling out of that and into a different kind of parallel, but more individually beneficial type force. Basically, I was hospitalized maybe 3 months ago now in a mental hospital. I had a kind of a manic episode. Long story, basically was living with my mother for a long time, and we had a falling out. Ended up in a hospital in South Atlanta, and then I basically was discharged to a group home. It's 5 houses, 4 men, 1 women houses, run by this guy named Angelo Benjamin. He's in South Decatur, mm-hmm. And now I'm living in this house. It's 16 guys, and in this immediate house, and it's it's intense. A lot of different, hardcore schizophrenia, schizoaffective, all kinds of stuff like that. I'm one of the more softcore type diagnoses in this house. But one of the things I'm trying to sit with is, one, I think there's a lot of need, honestly, for people to get into this community from these activist type circles and just go in with art therapy. There's so much dire need in the house I'm in. A lot of these guys are just sitting there smoking cigarettes and going to like programs that they don't give a shit about them, you know. And so I just want to open that up. The mental health angle is really important because a lot of people get incorporated into these groups and then they fall out. So help them. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I honor your journey. I too live with mental illness, and the practice of finding balance and finding a healthy way that I come from my center to do the work, I really think took those 10 years in between the recovery house in Decatur to Grant Park and Park Avenue. And so, yeah, coming to the work, really having, letting ourselves heal, letting ourselves know and understand how our brains work, I think is so, so powerful. I say this all the time in the work that I do. I truly see mental illness, neurodiversities as an extremely sane way of responding to a world that is crazy. And I don't even use that word. But for me, living with SMI, serious mental illness, is always a journey. And in fact, it forces me to continue to do that work of becoming. So some days I'm grateful for it, but I'm grateful to be a part of a community of folks who also do that work to heal ourselves. And I really appreciate. I want to hear about the program that you're in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a little reluctant to share this, but I'm at the very beginning of a new transformative journey, like day 2, leaving something behind and trying to find what is left for me and who I am and what I'm supposed to do, and really responding to this idea of creative transformation. I feel in the last 24 hours this wave of new ideas and energy, and simultaneously massive grief and massive fear and loss. And I just think something that was mentioned, I believe from your book, about authenticity really spoke to me, and it felt like that was the way I could honor all the craziness. I also don't like to use that word, but I just heard it, that's going on in my head, and if I can at least honor and acknowledge the part of me that is experiencing whatever I'm experiencing at this moment, and just let that be my truth and let that guide me, I might have a chance. So I just appreciated your words and the words here as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I honor your journey, and I definitely resonate with that idea of chaos within. Thank you for sharing it. You're doing exactly what you said. That's really beautiful. It really is. Maybe you'll share a little bit more with trusted folks if you find someone after the service. Thank you for sharing with us. Well, My Grandmother's Hands. Resmaa Menakem. And he's written a couple books since then that I have begun. This one is Resmaa Menakem studied under Bessel van der Kolk, who's kind of well known for the book The Body Keeps the Score. It's about it's more of a textbook, really. I tried to read it, and I was like, oh my, I don't know. But My Grandmother's Hands is definitely a book for practicing right then what is written there. It's quite beautiful. Well, if there's no one else who wants to comment, if it's okay with you, I'd love to close with that same poem that I read in the beginning. By Rilke, I am, you anxious one. I am, you anxious one. Don't you sense me, ready to break into being at your touch? My murmurings surround you like shadowy wings. Can't you see me standing before you, cloaked in stillness? Hasn't my longing ripened you from the beginning, as fruit ripens on a branch? I am the dream you are dreaming. When you want to awaken, I am that wanting. I grow strong in the beauty you behold, and with the silence of the stars, I unfold your cities made by time. Thank you all so much.